Hello and welcome to this video on the types of apples used for cider. Technically we could just say any apple and call it a day, but that is not much help. If you want to get into the details of brewing cider, there is a need to understand the different types of apples available. As said, you can just go collect apples and crush them into pulp and juice to brew cider. The difference will be the lack of predictability of the resulting cider. Who knows what apples you might get from one year to the next. The other issue is not knowing the results will be in a more specific sense. Overly sweet or very dry? Will it be a different colour to what you expect? Haze and... well, we could keep going, but you get the idea. Apple choice is important, and knowing what apples you have is kind of important. Cider apples are generally distinct from typical dessert or eating apples. That's because they are selected primarily for their profiles. Chemical profiles in a modern sense, but historically their profile in terms of what they do. Specifically, you start with sugar content. This is for both the fermentation, alcohol content, and the sweetness. Acidity, to give it some tartness and for preservation, and tannins for body, astringency, and complexity. Together, these traits make them ideal for producing hard cider, or cider as it's called in the rest of the world other than America. This is just fermented apple juice. Fermented. There's alcohol in it now. Unlike table apples, which prioritize having a crisp texture, being sweet, and an appearance, cider apples often have a rather bitter, astringent, or, chewy quality that makes them shine after fermentation, but really doesn't make them great for eating. They just don't feel right when you're eating them. The mouthfeel is all wrong. The most widely used classification system is developed at the Long Ashton Research Station in England. It divides cider apples into 4 main categories based on their malic acid content and tannin levels in the juice. Essentially how acidic they are and how bitter are they. First of all, you have sweet varieties. These are considered to have low acid at less than 0.45% and low tannin at less than 0.2%. These provide a lot of fermentable sugars and mild sweetness, but they don't have a lot of structure, so they're typically blended to boost alcohol potential and balance out some of the harsher varieties. Then you have the sharp varieties, which have a much higher acid level, typically above 0.5%, but still have low tannins at 0.2%. These will add a very bright coloration. There'll be a clear, typically, a cider, plus a certain amount of edge to it from tartness. They're there to help a lot more with inhibiting bacterial growth during fermentation, which makes them rather essential for blend stability. That is, you don't want your cider going nasty sometime between when you ferment it and when you go to consume it. Bittersweet, which have low acid, this is below 0.5%, and high tannin, above 0.2%. They add body, astringency, and flavour depth, but because they don't work well without an acidic partner, they will spoil quickly if used alone. This is why they need acidic partners, to prevent spoilage and also to balance out some of their flavour profiles. And then you have a bitter sharp. A bitter sharp is both high acid at above 0.45 and high tannin above 0.2. These are otherwise called vintage quality apples and will produce excellent single variety ciders due to the fact that they are reasonably balanced all round. But typically you also find that they are blended with other varieties of cider apple in order to enhance the flavour. This system has basically been foundational for both European traditions, UK, France, Spain, etc., and even in United States production, although admittedly the French and Spanish want to make their own thing as always, and so it does vary slightly. For example, they may add bitter as a separate high tannin low acid group. In practice, the best cider you can make will come from blending across the 4 categories. This creates a more, we'll say harmonious, although that doesn't feel quite right, it seems pretentious to describe it that way, a profile. It's something sweet from sugar, sharp for acidity, but also bittersweet and bitter sharp for tannins and mouthfeel. The sugar levels will be measured in brix, typically 10 to 18 in cider apples, and this will influence your final alcohol volume. Obviously, the higher end will produce more alcohol by volume, up to 8% after fermentation. In terms of pH, it can actually be relatively low at about 3 to 4, but this helps considerably with stability. Beyond these core elements, cider production also incorporates what are called dual-purpose apples. These are suitable for eating, cooking, and cider. The scab-resistant varieties, these are low-input growing, and local feral apples, wild or seedling types that sometimes give unique flavours. These are generally used either more in areas where you can't grow the typical varieties, or if you're trying to go down the craft pathway. For example, crab apples. These are small and often sharp or bitter sharp, and are sometimes included for an intense flavour, and certainly to add some sugar to it. If we look into specific varieties, there are some characteristic applications in commercial versus homebrewing contexts that become more important. There are, let's say, key cider apple varieties, and certain categories we'll look at. Some of these are from established sources, and those are primarily used for reference cider, but there are also some that are more unique, or at least a heritage heirloom, things like that, where they give you certain characteristics that aren't so much used for commercial purposes. What you're looking at when you do this is characteristics including flavour, harvesting time, yield potential, disease susceptibility, and typical use. Noting that regional adaptations are important. The US varieties will differ in performance from European varieties due to climate, and also various pest species, development pathways, and so on. You have sweet varieties. These are mild and generally sugary. They're used to dilute tannins and boost fermentation in blends. They're less common as a standalone due to their relatively boring profile. You have things like the Sweet Alford, the Sweet Coppin, the Belle de Boscoupe, and the St. Edmunds Russet, along with the Guyer, although the Guyer is more of a crossover. You find the Sweet Alford is easy for beginners, and it's relatively easy to source, and if you mix it with store-bought juice, you can get a simple sweet cider. The Sweet Coppin is also popular for home brewing, as it will help to soften sharp blends, and it's fairly readily available from nurseries, depending on where you are in the world. The Belle de Boscoupe is good because it's a strong storage candidate. That is, if you're looking to keep apples for a longer time, this is good. Then we have the sharp varieties. A high acidity provides considerable bite. Bite might be the right word, but it's going to work well enough, along with giving microbial protection, simply because microbes don't like acid. This makes them rather important for safe fermentation and longer-term storage. For example, Brown's apple, Bramley seedling, Cox's orange pippin, Harrison, and Wixon. A Brown's apple is a good candidate for home brewing as it adds tartness to sweet apples, and you can add it to a apple juice base and produce effectively the same result. Homebrewers use the Bramley seedling for English-style ciders, and Cox's orange pippin is popular for home blending due to its relatively high availability. Bittersweet varieties add tannic structure. This can be divided into English and French types for regional flavours. Dabinet, Yarlington Mill, Brown Snout, Harry Masters Jersey, and the Binet Rouge are all examples of this. The Dabinet is a good choice for home gardeners as it has consistent fruiting, meaning that if you have your own apple trees, you basically get year-on-year production of cider. The Yarlington Mill is reliable for home production as it stands alone for dry ciders. And the Brown Snout is used for those who want a strong aroma to their cider and blends well with sweet varieties. The Binet Rouge is an option that the French use instead. And then we have the bitter sharp varieties, which try and balance all of the described features, and are used standalone because they provide both a certain amount of bite and body. Kingston Black, porter'sperfection, Foxwhelp, Stoke Red, and Broxwood Foxwhelp. All of these are examples. The Kingston Black is iconic for homemade or home-brewed single variety, and is generally grafted onto rootstock for better yields. The Foxwhelp adds some more bite, especially for home brewing, and it has a crabapple-like intensity. And the Broxwood Foxwhelp is somewhat experimental, and it adds a layer of complexity that's not present in the other all-purpose examples we've given in the bitter sharp variety, let's say, portfolio. Commercial production is rather different again, mostly because commercially, apple cider is made in a way that is very different to, producing it at home. For example, commercial settings to make apple cider reliably, consistently, and often cheaply. This means they're also sourcing their apples from dedicated orchards, and occasionally as a byproduct of dessert apple packaging. For example, if you have rejected fruits, fruit juice that's been mushed out of other things when you're making, say, dried pulp for otherwise processed fruit. This is one reason why, say, high tannin varieties such as Davidoff and Kingston Black are prized somewhat. They provide a premium distinctive cider, but they have a big challenge. They don't give great yields. You might get, say, 800 to 1,200 bushels an acre for dessert type, but significantly less from your, say, high tannin varieties. But also they have issues around biennial bearing and high fire blight susceptibility, which makes them not great when talking about economics. They're less economical without very premium pricing, which means companies don't want to buy them unless they can avoid it. This brings us to the solution: blending. Blending is basically standard. Most commercial varieties are made 40% bittersweet for tannins, 30% sharp for acids, and 30% sweet for sugar content. This creates a reasonably stable, but somewhat more complex product. Somewhat being the key word there, as most ciders are not really that great, but you can get good varieties commercially. Then you have, let's look at America as an example. Regions like Michigan, that is the second largest US producer, and Pacific Northwest, have to emphasize disease-resistant hybrids. They just don't have a choice. Things like Liberty, Gold Rush, and so on. This gives the opportunity for low-input organic production. And then there are other experimental areas. MSU and Cornell are trying to look at cultivars that provide vigor, yield, and juice chemistry. But most breweries are relying on, high-density planting in an orchard on dwarf rootstock. This gives them efficiency and ideally better yield. Now, ideally is the key word here, is you can get anywhere up to 0.7 to 0.21 litres per pound. This is approximately between 0.34 and 0.42 litres per kilogram. It also provides a certain amount of phenolics for stability. This is where some of the dual-purpose varieties come in useful. Northern Spire and Ashmead's Kernel allow for more diversified income from not only the fresh sale of the apple as an eating apple, but also using the apples for brewing cider. There are also some scab-resistant varieties, such as Crimson Crisp and Enterprise, which reduce the need for pesticide use. There has been a problem though. All of these things have led to a fairly predictable outcome: a shortage of true cider apples. And this means that more and more commercial breweries for cider are relying on culinary types. That is, the types that are either used for cooking or for eating, which isn't great because they do present their own challenges in balancing the results you need versus what you have available to work with. However, some of this is being made up for by specialty plantings. In terms of homebrew production, homebrewing offers greater flexibility, because you can start with accessible apples, like say store-bought juice, or in some cases local orchards, and you're not looking to get the same sort of scale that a commercial brewery is trying to get. And beginners can use, say, dessert apples, Honeycrisp, Gala, etc., and blend it with crab apples, or in other cases wild or feral varieties, which have a high tannin and acid content. This allows for harvesting from unmanaged trees, adding a somewhat unique, not necessarily earthy, but let's say more organic, local, we're trying to think of the right word for this, but a flavour driven by what is available to you rather than what you want in the end, although it is rather more labour intensive. If you're looking at doing it this way, the recommended blending scale is roughly 50% sweet. This will give you a strong base and a reasonable amount of alcohol, 30% sharp for tartness, and 20% bittersweet, bitter sharp. This should give you a good balance of body versus flavour, alcohol, and sweetness, but you may need to experiment with ratios in a 5-gallon or roughly 20-litre batch. There are some varieties like Arlington Milk and Davenant which will thrive in your home garden for consistent fruiting, while grafting a feral tree onto rootstock will improve yield without losing much in the way of character. You do want to avoid biennial types if you're looking to try and do home brewing of cider. and Kingston Black being an example. The reason for this is that you need to manage it more actively, thinning out the fruit, for example. Home setups will benefit from what are effectively low-maintenance trees that you don't need to do a lot of work on. But also, other varieties, for example those that are scab-resistant, partly because they're low cost, and partly because they remove some of the issues around developing diseases in your trees that can then spread. And more so if you're looking at going in the organic growing pathway. There's also certain sources like, say, cider school guides and fermentation techniques. Overall, a home cider will emphasize creativity over precision, which will yield rather personalized results from either foraged or nursery-sourced apples, and in other cases you might be able to go to an orchard and get your own, if you aren't growing it in your own yard. By contrast, commercial breweries try and operate on the idea of being predictable and consistent, which is great for a commercial variety which is going to be the same year in year out and is honestly rather boring, but it is there. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it interesting, consider liking, sharing and subscribing, and please do post any comments, questions or suggestions you have below.